Welcome to Dramatic Paths, where every choice changes a destiny. Here, no one escapes the past, but no one is beyond transformation. True stories, unexpected twists, broken lives, and rebuilt. If you've ever faced a silent battle, if you've ever been at rock bottom, you're in the right place. Because on these dramatic paths, the miracle always comes after pain.
Why did you abandon us?
The delivery truck stopped at the end of the dirt road, between two leaning wooden posts, as if the path itself had given up on bringing anyone there. It was 5 a.m. in Rust Hollow, Montana. The air smelled of wet pine, cold earth, and with smoke that hadn't yet dissipated. Inside the truck, Daniel Voss gripped the steering wheel with both hands. His fingers, still marked by scars from a construction accident that took him away from the life he'd left behind, were trembling. He hadn't returned since the day he left with one suitcase, a wrinkled suit, and a note on the table. I can't follow you. Not anymore. 8 years. 8 years without looking back. 8 years building a logistics company now worth over $200 million. And now he was here, not by choice, but because a letter with no return address had arrived at his desk last Friday. A handwritten letter. Just one sentence. In short, firm letters. As if every stroke had been torn from deep within someone. You need to see what he carries. Daniel didn't know what it meant, but he knew that handwriting was hers. He got out of the truck. The expensive clean leather boots he'd bought in Seattle sank into the mud of the yard. Before him, the house. It wasn't a house. It was a shelter, an aged zinc roof, windows with patchwork curtains, a wooden fence that looked like it had been fixed with the hands of someone who had no money but had courage. And there, in front of the door, with hands dirty with earth and a worn cotton apron, she stood. Mara, her hair, once long and golden like the July sun, was now short, brown, tied back with a linen scarf. She didn't see him. She was burying something in the soil, a small wooden coffin, covered in wildflowers. Daniel didn't breathe, not out of fear, out of recognition. She turned around, slowly, as if time had shattered and was now, painfully, trying to piece itself back together. Daniel Voss. Her voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't bitter. It was exhausted, as if she had cried until there were no tears left. Mara. He didn't say hello. He didn't say it's been a long time. He just said her name, as if that were already an apology. She looked at the earth, then at him. You came because of the letter. Yes. And do you know what it means? No. She took a step forward. The earth clung to her ankles. Then look. She pointed to the small grave. He died last winter. Daniel felt the ground open beneath his feet. Who? Mara closed her eyes. Your son. The wind stopped. The birds singing in the pine tree went silent. The whole world seemed to take a deep breath, and then not breathe anymore. Daniel didn't fall, didn't scream, didn't cry. He just stood there, his hands trembling, his eyes fixed on the freshly dug earth. He had his name. Mara looked at him, for the first time, with something that wasn't hatred. It was sadness, a sadness that had been guarded, cared for like a sacred secret. No, she smiled, a smile that hurt more than a scream. His name was Silas. Why? Because silent is what he was. What do you mean? That he never spoke. Nothing. Since birth. Daniel felt the weight of a silence he never knew existed. A silence he didn't hear. A silence he didn't try to understand. She turned her back. Come inside. I'm not allowed. No, she looked at him, her eyes filled with a pain he never deserved to see. But you have to listen. To what? What he wanted to tell you. He spoke. No, then how? He wrote. She opened the door to the house. And the silence now came with her. The door to Silas's room was small, lower than the others, as if someone had made it for a child who never grew up, or for someone who never stopped being a child. Daniel didn't step inside. He stood on the threshold, his foot still in the shadow of the hallway. His heart pounding as if trying to escape his chest. The air inside the room smelled of old cornbread, of sheets washed with rosemary soap, and of a silence so profound it seemed to have weight. On the wall, a map of the United States, covered in colorful pins. Each one marked a place. Yellowstone red, Grand Canyon orange, Lake Superior blue, Chicago black. No pin had been pulled out. No place had been visited. On the table, a notebook. It wasn't an ordinary notebook. It had a cracked leather cover, bound with thick twine, as if it had been made by hand. On the cover, in faint but still legible pencil letters, "For Dad, when he comes back." Daniel took a deep breath and stepped inside. The floor was covered in drawings, not on paper, in paint, in charcoal, in colored pencil, scattered like fallen autumn leaves. A house with 3 windows, a woman with short hair and an apron, a man with a smudged face, just an outline, holding a key. Daniel knelt down. He touched the drawing. His hand was shaking. He opened the notebook. The first page, day 1. Mom said Dad is coming back. I don't believe it, but I write anyway. If he comes back, he'll read this. The second, day 5. Mom cried today. She doesn't want me to see, but I did. She looked at the picture on the door and said, "He's not coming back." I didn't speak. I stayed quiet. She needs silence. The third, day 12. I drew Dad's eyes. She said, "I don't remember them." But I do. He has the eyes of the sun. And when he smiles, his mouth goes crooked, like my doll's. Daniel felt a crushing pain in his chest. He didn't remember his own voice, but he remembered the face. It was true. He had a crooked smile because of a broken tooth in childhood. No one else knew that. He turned the page. Day 47. Mom took me to the doctor. He talked a lot. I didn't talk. He said I have a special mind. I don't know what that means. But Mom cried again. She said, "It's not your fault." I don't know what fault is, but I feel it. I feel like I didn't speak. Daniel ran his hand over the paper. The letters were small, firm, as if every word had been torn from within a silence that could no longer contain it. Day 89. I saw Dad on TV. He was wearing a suit. He talked. I didn't hear what he said, but I saw. He was smiling at people, not at me. I drew him on the wall. Then I erased it. Mom didn't see. Daniel swallowed hard. He had done an interview on CNN 6 months after leaving Mara. He had talked about expansion, about logistics, about the future. No one asked about the son he had left behind. No one knew. No one wanted to know. He turned another page. Day 192. I drew the house. The house Mom said we were going to have, with a yard, with a big tree, with a swing. I drew Dad sitting on the porch. He was holding a coffee, and I was next to him. I wasn't drawing. I was waiting. Daniel let out a sound. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry. It was a noise that came from somewhere he didn't know existed, a pain that had never been named. He turned the page. Day 301. I wrote a letter. I didn't send it. Mom put it in the drawer. She said, "One day when he comes back, I'll give it to him." I wrote, "Dad, I love you. I see you every night. You don't have to come, but I see you." Daniel opened the drawer. Inside, a letter, unsealed, unaddressed, just folded, as if it had been kept with care, but without hope. He opened it. The handwriting was small, shaky, as if written by a hand unsure if it should even try. "Dad, I don't talk, but I see. I see you in the window. I see you on TV. I see you in the mirror when Mom puts me to bed and she says, 'You have his eyes.' I don't know how to talk, but I know you are far away, and I feel like you don't know I exist. I don't want you to come back because you regret it. I want you to come back because you want to see me, because you want to hear me, because you want to know that I drew the sun you have in your eyes. I love you, Dad. I am here, and I haven't given up. Silas." Daniel fell to his knees. The notebook slipped from his hand. The letter dropped to the floor. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stayed there on the floor of his son's room, his face covered by his hands, as if trying to hold the entire world that was falling apart inside him. Outside, the doorbell rang. Mara didn't answer. The doorbell rang again, and after a heavy silence, a soft, almost childlike voice called out, "Mommy?" Daniel lifted his head. In the hallway, Silas was there, in his pajamas, barefoot, his eyes wide, and one hand holding a drawing. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just held out the drawing. It was a man, sitting on the porch, with a coffee, next to him, a child, and between them, a line. It wasn't a hand. It was a heart, and underneath, in very small pencil letters, "You came back?" Daniel looked up, and he saw. Silas wasn't asking, wasn't crying, wasn't complaining. He was waiting. And for an instant, just one instant, Daniel understood. It wasn't the son who had been forgotten. It was him. He was the one who had forgotten. And now, the silence was no longer empty. It was a voice that had waited 8 years to be heard, and which finally was being heard. Este a tragiceo do texto para o Ingalls. The morning in Rust Hollow arrived with a cold that cut through the lungs. The sky was gray, not from clouds, but from ashes, the fire from the day before it left its marks. A burnt roof, blackened walls, and the smell of char that clung to clothes like a memory that wouldn't leave. Daniel was kneeling on the porch, nailing the last board onto the swing. He had spent the entire night there, under the faint light of a lantern, cutting, sanding, fitting pieces together, not out of obligation, out of penance. Mara appeared with 2 steaming mugs. Coffee, black, no sugar, the way he liked it. Before, "You didn't sleep?" she said, handing him the mug. "No, why?" "Because I listened." She sat on the swing, testing the structure with her body weight. Sturdy, safe, as if Silas would still sit there. Listen to what? What he never said out loud. Mara blew on her coffee, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the mountains blurred with the sky. "He tried, you know." "Who?" "Silas." She turned to him, her eyes moist, yet dry. "When he was 4, he woke up one night screaming. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was effort, as if he was pushing something out of his chest." "What did he say?" "Nothing. But he tried." "He tried. For weeks. Every night. He would stand at my bedroom door, just looking, until one day he stopped. He said with his eyes, 'You don't need to. I already know you hear me.'" Daniel gripped the mug. The steam rose between them like a thin curtain. "Why? Why did he never talk to me?" "Because you never came back to listen." The sentence wasn't cruel. It was simple. Like the wind, like the snow, like the truth. I didn't know he existed. "No." She shook her head with a sad smile. "You chose not to know. You chose a world where certain pains don't fit. And Silas was a pain you didn't have the courage to carry." Daniel looked at the house. In the window of his room, of their room, the curtain moved. Silas was there, drawing. "Does he see me as a stranger?" "No, how then?" "As someone who can still choose." She got up, leaving her mug on the porch. "Come." He followed her to the barn. Inside, there was a rustic wooden shelf, full of boxes. Mara opened a third one from the top. She took out an album. He made one drawing a month, since the day you left. In the beginning, they were scribbles, then shapes, then you. Daniel opened the album. Page 1. A man leaving the house with a suitcase. Dark sky. The boy in the window, hand on the glass. Caption. Dad left. He didn't cry, but I cried. Page 7. The same man now in a suit in front of a tall building. The boy drawn small in the bottom corner, holding a letter. Caption. He is happy. I am happy for him. Page 12. 2 men, one old, one new, planting a tree. The new one has a smudge face. Caption. One day, maybe you will teach me. Page 19. A hospital bed. The boy lying down. The mother holding his hand. The father outside the window, looking in. Caption. I got sick. He didn't come, but I dreamed he did. Page 24, 3 figures, mother, son, father, sitting on the porch. No faces, but their hands are touching. Caption, this is my real dream. Daniel closed the album. His hands were trembling. He had pneumonia. Yes, last winter. It was fast. Were you with him? Until his last breath. He said anything? Not with his voice, but with his eyes. What? Tell him I waited. The wind swept through the barn, lifting dust and dry leaves. Daniel fell to his knees. He didn't cry, but his whole body shook, as if finally feeling the weight of 8 years of silence. Mara knelt beside him. He doesn't hate you, Daniel. He waited for you, and there's a huge difference between the two. She left. She left him there, with the album in his arms, as if it were a body he needed to bury again. Hours later, Silas appeared at the barn entrance. He had a drawing in his hand. He didn't speak. He just held it out. It was a man, on his knees, with an album in his lap, and above him a sky full of stars. In the bottom corner, in small letters, now he listened. Daniel looked up. Silas didn't smile, but he nodded a single time. And in that gesture, there was more than forgiveness. There was choice. He wasn't asking Daniel to stay. He was saying, you can. And for the first time since setting foot in Rust Hollow, Daniel felt that perhaps there was still time, not to fix the past, but to build something Silas deserved, a father who learned to listen to the silence. The night fell over Rust Hollow like a heavy veil of fog. Daniel was sitting on the back porch, with Silas's album on his lap and a cup of cold coffee in his hand. The fireplace fire had gone out, but he didn't move to relight it. He had spent hours reading and rereading every drawing, every short phrase, every heart drawn in the corner of the pages. He didn't cry, but every pencil stroke seemed to scratch at something inside him, something that had never been healed because it had never been named. Inside the house, he heard the sound of a drawer opening, then saw footsteps. Mara appeared in the doorway, holding a yellowed envelope. She didn't speak. She just held it out. What is this? The letter I wrote the day you left. You never sent it to me, because I knew you wouldn't come back. He took the envelope. It was sealed, as if it had been kept for a moment she never believed would arrive. He opened it carefully, as if the paper were made of glass. Daniel, today you said you can't follow me anymore, that the world you're building has no room for what we are. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of you, because I knew if I cried you would feel guilt, and I didn't want you to leave with guilt. I wanted you to leave with certainty. But I'm pregnant. I don't know how to say this without it sounding like a trap. It's not. It's just life insisting where you gave up. The doctor said it's a boy. He's already kicking. Sometimes when I'm alone, I put my hand on my belly and think, will he have the eyes of the sun? You don't need to come back because of this. But if one day you feel that the world you built is empty, look back. Not for me, for him, because he will love you, even if you never return. Mara, Daniel read it twice, then a third time. On the third reading, Mara's voice sounded behind him, calm, as if coming from far away. I wrote it that night. Why didn't you send it? Because the next day, I got a call from your office. From my office? Yes, a man named Richard Vance. Your lawyer. Vance. He said you had signed a total confidentiality agreement, that any contact with you, letters, calls, even news, would be blocked by a court order. That's not true. It wasn't true, but it felt real. She sat down beside him, her hands resting on her knees. I tried. I sent 3 letters. They all came back torn. A month later, I received a sealed envelope. Inside, just a photo. A photo of what? Of you, in New York, with another woman. I was never with another woman. It doesn't matter. The message was clear. Don't exist. Daniel felt his stomach clench. Vance, his former lawyer, the man who had handled his clean transition after the breakup with Mara, and who, months later, was fired for manipulating corporate documents. Vance betrayed me. Perhaps. But at that moment, All I knew was that you had erased me. And if you erased me, what would you do with a son who didn't ask to be born? Silence. The wind passed through the trees, carrying dry leaves and the smell of wet earth. Did Silas know I existed? Of course he did, but not as an absent father, as a possible dream. And why did he never speak? Because he thought that if he spoke, he would be rejected twice. Once for you not returning, another for you not listening. So he chose silence? No, he chose another language. Mara stood up and walked to the old wooden mailbox hanging on the fence. She opened it. She pulled out a small cloth bag. He would put a letter in here every month, since he was 4 years old, always on the 12th, the day you left. And what did he write? Simple things. Today I planted tomatoes. I dreamed you taught me how to fix the tractor. Mommy cried today, but I pretended not to see. And did he expect someone to read them? No, he knew they wouldn't reach you, but he wrote anyway, because writing was not giving up. Daniel opened the bag. Inside, dozens of small letters, carefully folded, tied with a wool thread. The last one was dated 2 days before his death. Dad, it's going to snow tomorrow. Mom said it's the first storm of winter. I drew you here in a thick coat, drinking coffee on the porch. I don't know if you like snow, but I like to imagine that you do. If one day you come back, don't blame yourself for arriving late. Just don't leave too early. Silas. Daniel closed his eyes. A tear slipped out, not of sadness, of recognition. His son didn't hate him. His son believed in him, even without proof, even without answers, even without a voice. I failed him. No. Mara placed her hand over his. You didn't fail. You weren't here. There is a difference. And now, she looked toward the house, where Silas slept in his bed of dreams. Now you decide, did you come only to redeem yourself, or to honor what he believed about you? Daniel looked at the letters, at the sky, at the earth where Silas was buried, and whispered, he believed I was good. Then be it. That night, Daniel didn't go back to the barn. He didn't sleep in the guest room. He stayed on the porch, with Silas's letters scattered around him, as if each one were a star that had finally found its place in the sky. And for the first time, he was no longer running from the past. He was building a future worthy of the son who had waited for him in silence. The following morning dawned with a clear sky, and the smell of burnt pine still lingering in the air. Daniel woke up early, before the sun, with Silas's letters still scattered around the makeshift bed in the barn. He had spent the night there, rereading every phrase, as if, by repeating the words, he could bring Silas back, if only for a second. But it wasn't about bringing him back. It was about hearing him now. Mara was already in the vegetable garden, watering the rows of tomato plants with a cracked wooden bucket. She didn't greet him. She didn't need to. The silence between them now was different. No longer one of grievance, but of respect. Did you sleep here? She asked, without looking up. Yes. Why? Because he is still here. She paused. She looked toward the barn, as if she could see through the walls. He left something for you. What? I don't know, but the day before he died, he spent hours in the barn, alone. When he came out, he said, "It's ready." Daniel stood up. He walked to the barn, now bathed in the golden light of dawn. He went inside. The wooden floor was worn, with loose planks and rust marks from old nails. He knelt down. He began to press on each plank. One of them gave way. Carefully, he used his pocket knife to pry up the wood. Beneath it, a small compartment, and inside, an object wrapped in linen cloth. It was an old, dull silver pocket watch. On the back, engraved with fine letters, "For Dad, when he learns to listen." Daniel opened it. The mechanism didn't work. But inside, instead of numbers, there was a small folded piece of paper. "Dad, this watch doesn't mark hours. It marks moments. The moments when someone chooses to stay. I don't know if you will choose to, but I believe you will. If you are reading this, it's because you stayed. And that is all I ever wanted. Silas." Daniel held the watch with both hands, as if it were too fragile for the world. In that instant, he understood. Silas wasn't waiting for him to be saved. He was waiting for him to choose to be present. Did he know I would come? Daniel asked without turning around. Mara walked into the barn, holding a cup of tea. No. Then why did he leave this? Because hope does not depend on certainty. It depends on courage. And he had courage? Silas had more courage than any adult I have ever known. He loved you without ever being loved back. And yet, he never stopped believing. Daniel closed his eyes. The watch felt heavy in his palm, not because of the metal, but because of the meaning. He died because of the cold, didn't he? Mara hesitated. Yes, the pneumonia came fast, but it was worse because he refused to go to the hospital. Why? Because the day before, I had received a letter from an office in Seattle. From whom? From a lawyer named Vance. Vance! He said you had authorized the sale of the farm, that I had 30 days to leave. That's a lie. I know, but Silas, he thought you were erasing us again, and he said, if he's going to erase us, I don't want to go to a hospital he paid for. Daniel felt his stomach clench. Vance, his ex-lawyer, the same man who isolated him from Mara 7 years ago. Now, he was coming back to destroy what was left. He didn't go to the hospital out of pride. No, out of loyalty. He preferred to die with the idea that you were good than to live knowing that you had become cruel. Daniel fell to his knees, not out of sadness, out of shame. I'm going to find him, Vance. No. Mara placed her hand on his shoulder. You won't go after him for revenge. Then why? For justice, so that no other child is erased by a man who doesn't know what it means to wait. She turned to leave, but stopped at the door. Silas left one more thing. What? An envelope in my dresser drawer. He said, only give it to him if he spends a night in the barn. Daniel looked at the watch, at the sky, at the earth where Silas slept. He knew I would spend the night here. No, then how? Because he knew that if you truly understood what he left, you wouldn't be able to leave. That night, Daniel opened the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. It wasn't a letter. It was a plan, a drawing of the farm, a new barn, a bigger vegetable garden, and, in the center, a wooden plaque with 3 names, Daniel, Mara, Silas, and underneath, written in charcoal, this is the house I dreamed of. Build it. Daniel walked out on the stars. He walked to the fence where Silas had been buried. He knelt. I will build it, son, not because you died, but because you believed. And in the darkness of Rust Hollow, the wind carried the promise as if it were a prayer finally heard. The dawn at Rust Hollow came with steel-colored sky and the biting wind that only Montana knows how to blow in late autumn. Daniel was in the field, digging the earth with his own hands. Not as a CEO, but as a man who finally understood that some things are only built with sweat. Since discovering the truth about Vance, something in him had changed. It was no longer about redemption. It was about justice. And the first form of justice was rebuilding what was almost erased. But before fixing the barn, before planting the first seed in the new garden, he needed to know why Silas was named Silas. That morning, while nailing a plank onto the new clothesline support, Mara appeared with 2 cups of coffee. She didn't speak. She just held one out. You're working like time is running out, she said, leaning against a clothesline pole. Maybe it is. Why? Because Vance won't wait. She looked at the horizon, where the mountains merged with the sky. Do you still think he's the one who sent the anonymous letter? No, then who? Someone who knew you wouldn't tell me the truth. And why wouldn't I tell you? Because I didn't deserve it. Mara sighed. You're still carrying that, aren't you? Daniel stopped hammering. I'm carrying everything. She turned to him, her eyes fixed, serious. Silas wasn't named Silas by chance. I know. No. You think you know. Then tell me. She walked to the old maple tree, where Silas used to sit and draw. Daniel followed her. When I found out I was pregnant, I went to the Billings library. Why? Because I wanted a name that didn't depend on you. And you found Silas? She shook her head. I found a story. In the Bible, not as religion, as literature. Silas was a man who traveled with Paul, a consoler, a builder, someone who didn't speak just to speak. He spoke when the truth was necessary. Daniel felt his chest tighten. You wanted him to be like that? I wanted him to never need to speak loudly to be heard. Silence. The wind moved the dry leaves around them, but he never knew what the name meant. He did. On his 6th birthday, I read the story to him. He was quiet for an hour. Then he wrote in his notebook, "So I am like Silas. I speak with my heart." Daniel swallowed hard. He was wiser than any adult. He was, and I wasn't even there. Mara looked at him, not with judgment, but with weariness. You weren't there, Daniel, but you are now, and what matters isn't what you lost. It's what you can still honor. Just then, a car stopped on the dirt road. It wasn't a delivery truck. It was a pristine black sedan with tinted windows. Daniel recognized it immediately. Vance. Mara frowned. Who? My ex-lawyer. The man who isolated me from you. He's here. It seemed so. The car did not turn off the engine. A window rolled down. Daniel Voss. The voice was cold, controlled as always. Richard Vance. Surprised to see me? No, just disappointed. Oh, really? Because I thought you had more sense than to return to a place that doesn't belong to you. Mara took a step forward. Who are you? A man who came to settle business. This is not a place for business. Everything is business, Mrs. Mara, charming. Vance stepped out of the car, wearing a gray suit and shoes that shone even in the mud. His eyes swept over property as if evaluating a lot of disposable lumber. I came to offer a deal. I don't want to hear it. You will want to. He opened a briefcase. I bought the mineral exploration rights for this region. Land rich in copper. The farm is right in the center of the extraction zone. Mara paled. That's a lie. It's not. The documents are registered with the county. And since Daniel here didn't renew the possession contract for the last 8 years, the property is technically in dispute. Daniel laughed. A dry, humorless laugh. You forged the records. Prove it. I will prove it. In the meantime, I can offer $1 million for this land. Clean money. Immediate transfer. And you can leave here today. Mara held Daniel's arm, her fingers tense. Don't accept. He won't accept, Vance interrupted, smiling, because he knows that if he refuses, I can file an action for eminent domain. And 6 months from now, this mud will become a construction site. Daniel took a step forward. You killed my son. Pardon? He refused to go to the hospital because he thought you were erasing us again. And you created that illusion. Vance was unfazed. Sad, but irrelevant. Now, what will it be? The money or the war? Mara looked at Daniel. Her eyes said, don't make promises. Make choices. Daniel took a deep breath. Leave, Vance. And if I don't, then I will use every penny I have to bury you. Not with money, with the truth. Vance laughed, loudly, falsely. Truth doesn't pay lawyers, Daniel. No, but it exposes lies. And you built your career on them. Vance closed the briefcase, his eyes dark as charcoal. You have until Friday. After that, the tractors arrive. He got into the car and drove off, kicking up dust like a demon leaving hell. When the sound of the engine faded, Mara turned to Daniel. What are you going to do? First, I'm going to the county registrar's office. And then I'm going to the city. I'm going to find out who worked with him, who he paid, who he threatened. And if you don't find anything, then I'll build Silas's barn right over the extraction line and let him try to remove me. Mara smiled, a small but real smile. You've changed. No, I just finally listened. That night, under the Montana stars, Daniel wrote a letter, not to Vance, to Silas. Son, a man came here today and said this land is worthless, but he didn't see what you saw. He didn't see the heart you planted here. That's why tomorrow I start building, not to prove I am right, but to prove you were right to love me. Dad. He placed a letter inside his pocket watch. And for the first time since he arrived at Rust Hollow, he didn't feel fear. He felt purpose. Silas, you wrote that I had the eyes of the sun. You were right, but you didn't know that the sun's eyes don't just shine in the sky. They shine when someone sees them. And you saw me, even when I didn't see myself, even when I didn't deserve it. You saw me, and you waited for me. Daniel closed his eyes, and for the first time since arriving in Rust Hollow, he didn't feel guilt. He didn't feel regret. He felt gratitude, because Silas didn't forgive him. He elevated him. And in that instant, Daniel understood the true inheritance wasn't the farm. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the silence. It was faith, the faith of a boy who didn't speak, but who, with every drawing, said, I believe in you. And Daniel, for the first time, decided to be worthy of it. He stood up, he picked up the drawings, and walked back to the house. On the porch, Mara was sitting, holding a cup of tea. She didn't ask. She just looked at him. Daniel held out the drawings. He had a friend. Who? A judge named Elias Thorne. I didn't know. Neither did I. But he wrote something on every drawing. And all of them were for me. Mara took one. She read it. And then another and another. And then she cried. Not out of sadness. Out of recognition. He wasn't alone, Daniel. No, he had someone who saw him. Yes. And now I see, too. That night, Daniel wrote a new letter. Not to Vance. Not to the past. To the future. Silas, today I read what you left. And I understood you didn't forgive me because you didn't need to. You loved me, even without words. And now I will live as if you were by my side. Not out of guilt, out of honor. I will rebuild the barn. I will plant the garden. I will protect this land. And every day when the sun rises, I will look at the sky and say, I am here, son, and I won't forget anymore. Dad. He put the letter inside the pocket watch, and he kept it against his chest. In the bedroom window, Silas was there not as a ghost, but as a presence. And when Daniel looked up, he thought he saw, for a second, a smile in the sky. It wasn't the sun. It was the heart of a boy who never stopped believing. The morning in Rust Hollow arrived with a sky of such pure blue that it seemed to have been washed by the night before. The sun was creeping between the pine trees, spilling light onto the rebuilt barn, still without a roof, but with the beams already raised, like the bones of a new beginning. Daniel was there, alone, hammering an oak plank with hands wrinkled by sweat and dirt. It wasn't a carpenter's work. It was an act of memory. He hadn't built anything in his life that deserved to be remembered. But now, every nail, every notch, every knot in the wood was a name. Silas, Silas, Silas. Mara appeared with a bucket of water and a freshly baked loaf of bread. No good morning. No questions. She just placed the bread on the toolbox and sat on the edge of the barn, her feet swinging in the open air. You didn't sleep, did you? No, why? Because when I close my eyes, he's still there. Who? Silas. No, she shook her head. He's not there anymore, but he is here. Daniel pointed to the ground, to the beams, to the notebook open beside the hammer. He is in every drawing, in every letter, in every silence that I finally learned to listen to. Mara took a sip of water. You still don't know what he did the night before he died. Daniel stopped. The hammer fell. What? She looked at the sky, as if she were seeing something beyond. He went to Judge Thorne's office. What? Not that day. But the night he got his first fever. But he was sick. Yes. She sighed. But he didn't go to the hospital. No, he went to town. Alone. Yes. At 8 years old? Yes. Daniel felt the world spin. How? He took the morning school bus. But he didn't speak. He didn't need to. Mara stood up, walked to the barn, and opened a metal trunk that Daniel had never noticed. Inside, there was a small notebook, with a plastic cover, featuring a cartoon, a dragon with glasses. And on the first page, a date, November 12th, 2024. He wrote this the night he started to feel bad. And what did he write? Mara opened the notebook. Today I went to town. I didn't speak, but I went. Judge Thorne was in the office. He was alone. I went inside. He didn't see me at first. He was looking at a photo. A boy, the same look I have. I sat in his chair. He looked, didn't speak, just looked at me. Then I put the notebook on the desk, the letter notebook, and I left the watch you made for Dad. Then I left. When I got home, Mommy was crying. I didn't speak, but I knew he's not coming back. So I decided, if he won't come, I will leave everything he needs to know. Silas. Daniel grabbed the notebook. The letters were smaller, more shaky, as if they had been written with cold fingers, with shortness of breath. He knew he was going to die. He knew he wouldn't survive, but he didn't want to die with fear. He wanted to die with dignity, with certainty. What certainty? That you, even without knowing it, were already the father he needed. Daniel opened the last page. It was a drawing, just like he used to do. A man sitting on the porch with a coffee, beside him a child, and between them a line. It wasn't a hand. It was a heart, and underneath, written in charcoal, as if with the last stroke of life, Dad, I love you. I don't need words. You already listened. Daniel fell to his knees. The notebook slipped from his hands. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. But the ground beneath him seemed to open. He went to the judge to leave everything, so that if you came back, you would know that he didn't hate you, that he loved you, that he waited for you, and that he forgave you. Mara knelt beside him. Do you know why he did that? Why? Because he believed you were good. But I wasn't. No, but he believed. And that is what makes a father. Not what you do, but what someone believes you are. Daniel looked at the sky, at the barn, at the notebook, at the watch, which was still in his jacket pocket. And now you decide. What? If you will live as the man he believed you were, or as the man you were. Daniel picked up the notebook. He placed it over his heart. I will live as he believed. Then I will fight. Why? Because he gave me a gift. What? The chance to be the father he imagined. And now I will face Gregory Hale. No, what? You won't face him. But he tried to destroy us. Yes. Then you won't face him with anger. Then how? You will face him with truth. Mara took the notebook, opened the last page, and pointed to the heart drawing. You won't fight against him. Will I? You will fight for him. For Silas? No, then for whom? For all the silences he represented. The silences? Yes, the children who weren't heard. The mothers who were deceived. The fathers who were behind money. Silas wasn't just a boy. He was a symbol. And now you are his spokesman. Daniel closed his eyes. He felt the weight of the notebook. He felt the warmth of the watch. He felt the wind pass, as if Silas was whispering. Go. That afternoon, Daniel took the car. He didn't go to the city. He didn't go to Vance's office. He went to the municipal records office. There, he requested access to all property records purchased by Gregory Hale in the last 5 years, in 3 counties, in 7 cities, 38 properties, all purchased with the same pattern: falsified contracts, altered documents, invented debts, displaced families, children without fathers, mothers without a voice. And in every case, there was one signature, not Gregory's, an employee's, an employee who, in all the records, signed with the same name, Richard Vance. Daniel sat on the car seat. His hands were shaking, not with anger, with power. He didn't have an army. He didn't have money. He didn't have influence. But he had truth, and truth when written by a boy who never spoke, cannot be ignored. That night, Daniel wrote a letter, not to the police, not to the newspaper, not to court, to Silas. Son, today, I discovered that you are not the only one. There are children on other farms, in other cities, who also didn't speak, mothers who were also deceived, fathers who also ran away. And I was one of them. But you showed me that it's not too late. I will open an office, not to make money, but to listen. I will call it the silence that doesn't speak. I will help families that no one wants to see. I will fight the Van Cess of the world, not for revenge, but because you taught me that silence is not weakness. It is courage. And now I will be their voice, because you taught me that, even without words, the heart can scream louder than any courthouse. I love you, Silas. And today I begin. Dad. He put the letter inside the watch, and he put the watch to his chest. In the bedroom window, Silas was there, not as a ghost, but as a presence. And when Daniel looked up, he thought he saw, for a second, a smile in the sky. It wasn't the sun. It was the heart of a boy who never stopped believing. The morning in Rust Hollow arrived with a sky so blue it seemed to have been painted by someone who still believed in miracles. A gentle wind swayed the pine needles, and the smell of wet earth from the night before's rain mixed with the aroma of freshly baked bread coming from Mara's house. Daniel stood on the porch, wearing a new, clean shirt, but no tie. It wasn't a suit. It wasn't a CEO's uniform. It was the clothing of a man who had learned to work with his hands, to sweat, to wait. In Silas's bedroom window, a small shadow moved. Silas wasn't there, but what he left was... Mara appeared with a plate of bread and honey. You didn't sleep, did you? No, why? Because I remembered what he said in his last letter. Which one? You don't need to forgive me. You just need to be the father I believed you were. She sat beside him. You are. But what if I'm not enough? You don't need to be enough for the world. You only need to be enough for her. Daniel looked at the sky. Who is she? Emily. The word dropped like a stone in a lake. Daniel didn't answer, not because he didn't understand, but because he didn't know what to say. She is Lena's daughter. I know, but you don't know who she is. Who? The girl you saw in the window. The one you hid. I didn't hide her. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know if you deserved to know. And now you know. And you, I still don't know if I want you to stay. Daniel didn't speak. He just picked up the letter Silas had left in the drawer. The last one, the one he hadn't read yet. Dad, if you are reading this, it's because you came back. And if you came back, then you listened. And if you listened, then you are no longer the same. I didn't speak because I didn't want you to feel guilty. But I wanted you to know I love you, and I never stopped loving you. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be true. And I believe you are. Silas. Daniel wiped his eyes with his sleeve. He knew. Knew what? That I would come back. No, then how did he? He didn't know if you would come. He just knew that if you were the kind of man he believed you were, then you wouldn't be able to stay away. Daniel stood up. He went to the barn. He opened the wooden box where he kept Silas's drawings. He took out a folded paper. It was a drawing made with charcoal. A man sitting on the porch with a child beside him. And between them, a line. It wasn't a hand. It was a heart. And underneath, written in pencil, almost erased, if you come back, call me Silas. And don't call me son. Call me friend. Daniel closed his eyes and whispered, I call you friend, Silas. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Mara went to answer it. Daniel heard a soft voice. Excuse me, ma'am. I don't mean to bother. But yes, I came to see Daniel Voss. Daniel walked out. At the door stood a woman. Gray hair, deep eyes, a worn but clean wool coat. She was holding a folder. Are you Daniel? I am. My name is Eleanor Thorne. The name of the judge. Yes. She smiled, a sad yet calm smile. My husband was Elias Thorne. I read the drawings. I read them, too. And I came because he asked me to. What? He asked me to come here, if he returned. And what did he ask? That I give you this. She opened the folder. Inside, there was an envelope. And inside the envelope, a deed. Daniel read it. To the heirs of Silas Voss. In the name of justice, memory, and the silence that was not ignored, I recognize, by judicial decision, that Silas Voss, born 2016, deceased 2024, was a son worthy of love, presence, and inheritance. Therefore, I declare that the property of Rust Hollow Farm, as well as the rights to the name Silas Voss, are transferred in full possession and use to the biological father, Daniel Voss, as guardian of the memory and will of the boy who never spoke, but who, with every drawing, shouted louder than any word. Signed, Eleanor Thorne, executor of the will of Elias Thorne. Daniel fell to his knees, not out of weakness, out of reverence. He gave me the farm? No, what? He gave you the right to take care of it. But Elias didn't want you to inherit it as an asset. He wanted you to inherit it as a vow. Of what? That truth doesn't need a voice. That love doesn't need words. And that a father doesn't need permission to love. Only courage. Mara appeared behind them, her eyes full of tears. He knew you would come. I didn't know, but he knew. How? Because he saw what you didn't see. What? That you weren't a man who ran away. You were a man who didn't know how to come back. Daniel stood up. He picked up the deed. He placed it over his chest. So? I no longer need to fight Vance. No, what do I need to do? Do what he did. What? Right. Right what? His story. For whom? For everyone who was never heard. That afternoon, Daniel went to the town hall, not to sue, not to denounce, to create, in the municipal secretary's office. He asked permission to open a space for children who don't speak. Why? Because Silas didn't speak. But he was heard. Yes. Then why create a space? Because not everyone has a judge who saves drawings. Not everyone has a mother who never gave up. Not everyone has a father who comes back. So, I want everyone to have that. How? With a name. Which one? The silence that doesn't speak. The secretary looked at him, not understanding. That's not an NGO. It's a church. Of what? Of truth. Without preaching. Without words. Only with drawings. And ears. The next day, Daniel put up a sign at the entrance of the town's old abandoned school. It read, "The silence that doesn't speak, a place for those no one heard." You don't need to speak. You just need to be seen. In memory of Silas Voss, 2016 to 2024. That night, Mara went to barn. She found Daniel sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers, pencils, paints. He was drawing. What are you doing? A new notebook. For whom? For the children who will come here. What will you write? Nothing. Then I will leave the space blank. For what? So they can write. And if they don't write, then I will wait. Like Silas. Like Silas. Mara sat beside him. Are you okay? No, but you are. I am where I should be. The next morning, a little girl showed up. She was 7 years old. Brown hair, big eyes, and hadn't spoken since her father was arrested. She entered the building. She didn't say anything. She just looked at the sign. Then at Daniel. And then at the blank notebook on the table. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't move. He just held out the pencil. She took it and drew a heart, 2 hearts, 3 hearts, and underneath a sentence in small letters, "I am here." Daniel smiled, not out of sadness, not out of relief, but out of recognition, because Silas hadn't died. He had become an echoing whisper. And now the whisper had a voice. That night, Daniel wrote a letter, not to Mara, not to the judge, to Silas, Son, today, a little girl came here. She didn't speak, but she drew 3 hearts. She said with the pencil, I am here. And I truly understood what you meant. You wanted to come back to fix the past. You wanted me to come back to build the future. And I am, not out of guilt, not out of forgiveness, but because you taught me that silence is not empty. It is a place. And you are the first one to live in it. I love you, Silas. And today, I am no longer alone. Dad, he put the letter inside the pocket watch, and he kept it against his chest. The next day, a letter arrived, not from Vance, not from a lawyer. It came from a national newspaper. The silence that doesn't speak. The NGO born from a boy who never spoke and changed the town. Daniel didn't read it. He just looked at the photo of the sign and at the photo of the girl sitting at the table, drawing. Mara appeared behind him. And now, yes? Now, I will teach the next child to draw. And then, Daniel looked at the sky. Then, I will teach the world to listen. And for the first time since arriving in Rust Hollow, Daniel didn't feel like he was trying to fix the past. He felt like he was fulfilling a promise. And Silas was by his side, without words, without sound, but with everything. The sun rose over Rust Hollow as if it had been waiting for this, not as a new day, but as a promise fulfilled. Daniel was on the porch, sitting in the wooden chair he had repaired himself. Beside him, Silas's pocket watch, open on a linen cloth. Inside it, the letters, Judge Thorne's, Mara's, the last one written by himself on the night he decided to stay. He wasn't waiting for anything. He was just there, as Silas had done for 8 years, without rush, without shouts, just present. Mara appeared with 2 cups of tea. No good morning, no forced smile, just the silence that was now familiar, like a hug without arms. She sat beside him. You didn't sleep. No, why? Because I didn't want to miss the sunrise. It was always beautiful here. Yes, but now it's different. How? Before, I saw it as a place I had abandoned. Now it's where I found myself. She looked at the watch. Does it still tick? No, so it doesn't need to. Daniel pointed to the sky. Time doesn't pass here. It just accumulates. In every drawing, in every letter, in every silence I finally learned to listen to. A light step approached. Emily, the girl who had drawn the 3 hearts, stood at the barn door with Silas's notebook in her hand. She didn't speak. She just handed it over. Daniel opened it. On the last page, there was now a new drawing. 2 adults holding hands, a child between them, and in the sky a star, and underneath, in child handwriting, but firmer, I love you, Dad, and I love you, Mom, and I love you, Silas. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. She wrote this? Yes. And you? I left the notebook on the table. And she picked it up, and she wrote, because she knows. What? That he is still here. How? Because you didn't leave him. And that is what makes a father. Not what he does, but what someone believes he is. Daniel closed the notebook. He placed it over his chest. I am not a good father. You are the father he needed. And now you are the father she needs. And you, she looked at him for the first time without a mask. I am still learning to trust. I understand. But, today the letter arrived. Daniel stopped. From whom? From Judge Thorne. But he died. Then, no, she smiled sadly but truly. The judge didn't die. He left one last envelope. For you, for us, for them. Daniel stood up. Mara went into the house. She returned with a yellowed envelope without a stamp. No address, just a name written in the judge's same fine handwriting. Daniel Voss, for when you stop running. Daniel opened it. Inside, a single sheet and a key, small, silver. with a small heart engraved on the tip. Daniel, you don't need a title to be a father. You don't need money to be a hero. You just need courage, the courage to stay. Silas taught me that. And you, my dear, taught me what to do with that courage. The key is for the municipal library. The back room, the one no one uses. There's a box with everything Silas left, but which I never gave to you, not out of forgetfulness, but because he asked me to wait. Wait until you were no longer running, until you were no longer asking for forgiveness, until you simply were, go there, open it, and read. Elias Thorne. Daniel looked at Mara. Why didn't he give it to me before? Because Silas knew you weren't ready. And now you are. They walked to town. The wind was cold, but not cutting. Now it was just gentle. At the library, the back room was dark, full of dust and old books. The box was in the corner, behind a wooden shelf. Daniel opened it. Inside, there was more than he imagined. 36 drawings, 17 letters, a diary, a wooden comb, a child's shoe, and a cassette tape. Mara picked up the comb. He used this to comb his mother's hair. When she was sick, he didn't speak, but he cared. Daniel held the shoe. He lost it in the winter. I found it and didn't return it. Why? Because I wanted him to come back. And he came back. Yes, but not for me, for Silas. And he didn't want you to come back out of guilt. He wanted you to come back out of love. Daniel put the shoe back. He picked up the cassette tape. He put it in the old player that was still there. Forgotten, he pressed a button. A silence. Then a voice. Small, trembling, but clear. Dad, if you are hearing this, then you came back. I didn't speak, but I wanted to. I wanted to say that I didn't hate you. I loved you, even when you weren't here. Even when I didn't know if you were coming back. Even when I felt that maybe you didn't want me, but I loved you, and I love you. And if you hear this, I am here, not in the earth, in your soul, and I will never leave. Silas. Daniel fell to his knees, not out of pain, out of recognition. Mara knelt beside him. He heard you, Daniel. What? When you spoke to him at the cemetery. You heard? Yes. What did I say? You said, I will build it, son, not because you died, but because you believed. Daniel looked at her. Were you there? Yes. Why? Because I needed to listen to. What? That love doesn't die. It just hides. And sometimes it waits. For years. For silences. For letters that were never sent. For watches that don't tell time. But mark presence. Daniel stood up. He took the tape and the key and left the library. That night, he returned to farm. He went to the barn and put the cassette tape inside the wooden box that he and Mara had built together. The box where they kept Silas's drawings. Beside it, he placed the watch and the notebook and the shoe and, finally, the letter he had written to Silas. The last one, son, today I heard your voice. And for the first time, I didn't cry because you were gone. I cried because you taught me that absence is not the end. It is just the silence before the answer. I won't forget you. I will remember you. Every day, I will teach the children who come here that they don't need to speak to be heard, that they don't need to shout to be loved. And when they ask, who was Silas? I will say, he was the boy who never spoke, but who, with every drawing, shouted louder than any word. And then I will point to the sky, and I will say, look, here, now, he is here. Dad. Daniel closed the box. It wasn't locked. It didn't need to be. It was open for anyone who wanted to come, for anyone who needed to listen. In Silas's bedroom window, the curtain moved. It wasn't the wind. It was Emily. She was there, with the notebook in her hand. She didn't speak. She just placed a new drawing inside the box. A heart, 2 hearts, 3 hearts. And in the center, a single sentence, "I love you, Silas." Daniel smiled and whispered, "I love you, son." And for the first time since arriving in Rust Hollow, Daniel didn't feel like he was trying to fix the past. He felt like he was fulfilling a promise. Silas hadn't died. He had become the soul of the house, the voice of silence, the heart that never stopped beating. The next dawn, Daniel woke up early. He went to the porch. He sat in the chair and waited, not for someone, not for an answer, just to be. And when the sun rose, he listened, not with his ears, but with his chest. And in every ray of light that cut through the trees, in every step of Emily on the grass, in every laugh of Mara in the yard, in every drawing the child left in the box, he heard, "I am here." And nothing more was needed. If this story touched your heart, don't keep that emotion to yourself. Leave a like, because every like helps bring hope to those who are still in the darkness. Subscribe to Dramatic Paths, because every week we have a new real journey, full of twists, forgiveness, and second chances. Share, especially with someone who needs to hear. Your story isn't over yet. And in the comments, I want to know, did this story remind you of someone? Tell your experience. Your words can be the light someone else needs. Thank you for watching. Until the next Dramatic Path, subscribe, turn on notifications, and never stop believing.